Good morning, Royal We family. Standing behind me here is the tallest man-made monument in the United States, making it one of the tallest standing man-made monuments in the world. This is the St. Louis Arch. I've lived here in St. Louis now for 3 years, and I have yet to visit the Arch and go to the top. Partly because I'm a busy guy, but the other part is because maybe I'm afraid of heights just a little bit. So in this segment of Treat Yourself or Challenge Yourself, I am challenging myself to get up to the top of the Arch. Let's do it. The Arch Monument stands roughly 650 feet up in the sky. How high is that? Well, I'm going to send the Royal We drone up into the air to give you an idea. So to get to the top of the Arch, we're going to get inside of an elevator like this one right here. I hope you're not claustrophobic. It's like being inside of an egg. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous about going to the top. There we go. I'm coming. We made it to the top. Did it! Yes! Come on, Royal We family. Yes, Royal We family, we are conquerors. Now for this video, I want to talk to you about the biblical principle of loving your enemies. This is a biblical principle. It's a commandment spoken by the words of Jesus. However, we fall into the trap of just focusing on one aspect of this principle, the love aspect, and we fail to see what the entire principle is trying to say. Thus, it can become very dangerous and actually keep you stuck in a toxic situation that you should have gotten out of a long time ago. So let's look at the whole principle so we can have a better understanding of what it means to love your enemies. Number one, understand that what's really being said here is that you will have enemies. This is something that we don't put enough emphasis on. You can put so much emphasis on the love part that you fail to see that Jesus is telling you that you will have enemies. Too many of us have fallen into that Christian bubble trap of believing that if you're good enough, kind enough, loving enough, that you'll never have any enemies, and that's just not true. Jesus had enemies. The Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Romans. These people followed him around, mocking him, criticizing him, ridiculing him, picking up rocks to throw at him and the disciples. You will have enemies. Another thing we can tend to do is over-spiritualize that. And say things like, well, we don't battle with flesh and blood, but powers and principalities. Listen, that's true, but that's for our life. That's our mental struggle. That doesn't mean we don't have enemies. That doesn't mean we're not going to have people who are not going to try to rob you and steal from you and hurt you. No, you have real enemies in flesh. Did you know that the Bible actually contains the word enemies over 357 times, according to the King James word count? It's used more times than the word love. Yeah, I think enemies is an important aspect. It's something that you and I need to grow comfortable with and understand that in this life, you will have enemies. So give yourself permission to accept the fact that there will be people who don't like you. You'll have enemies. Number two, the second thing to understand about this, and this is important, is that narcissistically abusive people are your enemies. They're not your friends. Why would I qualify narcissistically abusive people as enemies? Because they're not for you. Many of you are here watching this video right now because you've been so hurt and used and abused by them. They criticize you, ridicule you, do whatever they can to ruin your reputation, your character. They want to squash you out. Many of you have actually experienced physical abuse at the hands of a narcissistic, hostile, abusive person. That's not somebody who loves you. They don't do these things because they love you and they want to be with you and they want to be your friend. They do these things because they want to overpower you, show their superiority to you, because they are your enemies. And so when you look at it this way, stop trying to hang out with enemies. Stop sleeping with your enemies. Stop trying to have coffee dates and drinking dates with your enemies. Understand that narcissists are your enemies. And now some of you might be saying, well, wait, Kevin. The narcissists I deal with are family members. Are you trying to tell me that family members can be enemies? Well, listen, don't take my word for it. That's actually in the Bible too. It says, therefore, in that day, a man's enemies will be members of his own household. Or maybe you should go back and reread the story of Cain and his brother Abel. Or the story of King David and his own son Absalom. Right? What's interesting about the story of King David and his son Absalom is that by the end of it, the king's men caught up with Absalom and they took his life. And they reported back to the king. And when King David said, did you guys come across my son? What happened? They basically said, King, your enemies are no more. So even when you fail to see that certain people, close people, even family members are enemies, other people will be able to plainly see it for you. It's not healthy. It's a toxic relationship. All right? So yes, narcissists should be considered enemies. So stop playing with them. Okay? Now the third thing to understand is the word love. All right? The word love that's used in the principle, love your enemies, is not the word love that you and I have adopted through the hippie culture of Hillsong Church. Right? It's not a love that says, hug it out, bro. Let's hug it out, sister. And crying and all this emotional stuff. That's not the word. That's the word that gets us trapped in looking at and trying to figure out what love is. Listen, modern day love, it means nothing, right? Even narcissistically abusive people use that word. I love you after they abuse you because it has no meaning, okay? Thank goodness that the Bible has an original language it was written in, right? As far as the New Testament, the Greek, and it has a specific word that was used in that context. That word is agape. Agape has a completely different meaning. It's not a emotional, let's hug it out, brosive, hippie type of love. That word agape is a specific word that means you act from within you in a way in which helps somebody else out, but you don't need anything in return. Right? You and I do achieve this love all the time. If you feed the homeless, you're doing something without getting something in return. Right? It's that same principle. It's from the power within you, it's from the kindness within you that works outward, expecting nothing. That is how you are to love your enemies. And this is only to maintain peace. It's not to hug each other and become best friends. It's to maintain peace and to show your character and to show that you stand out. That just because people are aggressive and mean doesn't mean you have to be. That's what that word love is. We have an example of this in the New Testament of the Bible. Jesus and his disciples are out and about and they come across a Canaanite woman. Now, to understand the context of what's taking place, you got to know that the Canaanite people were narcissistically abusive, aggressive, hostile people towards the Jewish people. They acted like dogs. They were the people who would go out and throw rocks and sticks and slander them and curse at them and try to fight with them. They were nasty, vicious people. It was well known throughout the area. The Canaanite people acted like a bunch of vicious, hungry dogs. Okay? And so now Jesus and his disciples are out and about, and this Canaanite woman starts following them saying, help, help. So to understand what's taking place, it would be as though the narcissistically abusive person in your life started following after you saying, help me, help me. You wouldn't know if they're being serious or if they're lying or if they're setting you up or if it's a trap. So Jesus chooses to ignore her for the longest time. People struggle with this scripture. Why does Jesus ignore the Canaanite woman? Isn't he full of love? You got to understand who and what he's dealing with, right? He's showing something. that you don't have to give in to the commands and the demands of narcissistically hostile people. That's what he was showing by ignoring her. He finally turns around and says, it's not right for me to give what I should be giving to the children of Israel to the dogs. He called her out on her behavior. He called the narcissists out, saying, you're vicious dogs. What I have, I shouldn't be giving it to you. Right? And now something interesting happened. The woman humbled herself down, agreed with him, and said, yes, I know we are vicious people. I know. But even the vicious dogs can benefit from crumbs from you. Right? And when he saw this, he was moved and he helped her. He said, let it be as you believe. So it's important to understand that Jesus did not just give in because she was demanding and screaming help. Neither should you. That's not what love is. You can call people out for their behavior and still be loving, still maintain peace, right? What he was doing was testing. Is this a trap? How do I know you don't want to just be narcissistic and it's an ambush? You're going to bring out your Canaanite people, start throwing rocks at us, right? He's giving us, showing us that it's appropriate to be this way when you have boundaries around yourself. But then it's also appropriate to give when you're in a position to give. So the 3 takeaways from this video is, number 1, give yourself permission to have enemies. Understand that people will not like you. That's part of the world that we live in. So long as you're here with your face in this dirt, we will have people who will be enemies. There's no escaping that. Number 2, narcissistically abusive people are your enemies. Stop trying to make them your friends and your buddies. Number 3, love as though you have the power within you to do appropriate things at the right time, not to get something in return from enemies, not to see a change in narcissistic behavior, not to become best friends with people who do bad things, but because it's from within you and you can do it because you're different and you're set apart. I'll be back with more videos for you right here on The Royal We.